Learning a second language is an important and desired skill in today's world. It opens up dozens of job opportunities, includes you in communities of millions of speakers, exposes you to various cultures, and strengthens your brain in many ways. However, it is also time-consuming, difficult, and requires a lot of resources. There are several limitations that can prevent as well as facilitate second language acquisition. The age that you start, the educational resources you have access to, etc. But there is one that can be controlled despite these external circumstances: motivation. The U.S. Department of Education defines motivations as one of the most critical factors in any learner's success, especially a second language learner. Motivated students are more likely to begin learning, stick with it, and reach the goals they set for themselves. Linguists and educators claim that motivation is flexible, not fixed, unlike many other important factors. Motivation is much more complex than just a feeling or desire. There are dozens of factors that can impact one's motivation, such as personal background, culture, either one you were born into or assimilated to, job opportunities. One can begin motivated, gain motivation, or even lose motivation. It is a very wide, very deep topic that, like most matters of the brain, is not fully understood, but is well approximated. Understanding the ways that we do know of how to facilitate oneself in motivation is a crucial part of any language learner, as a lack of motivation may lead to no learning at all. The different methods people use for language learning have their influences on one's motivation as well. A kind teacher may guide a nervous student, but a strict one might repress even the most curious learner. Apps like Duolingo use the enticement of streaks to motivate learners to sign on every day. Each method has its pros and cons, and recently social media has emerged as a new tool that might be able to fit into the language learner's arsenal. Language publications such as Verbal Planet, which help language learners get closer to fluency, recommend social media as a tool because it can be used to connect learners and foster communities. Sites like Instagram or Facebook, while not specifically language learning resources, are infamous for building niche circles, and foreign language communities are no different. The desire to join groups and understand culture is a large factor in many language learners' motivations, and while traveling abroad or living immersively isn't easily accessible for most, social media can provide a quick and convenient way to connect online with like-minded people, both learners and natives. Today on Atone with Malone, I wish to explore how social media affects a language learner's motivations and the various benefits or consequences that can be gleaned from it. All right, everybody, welcome back to Let's Atone with Malone. My name is Eamon Maloney. I'm a linguistic researcher here at Georgetown University, examining how social media can impact someone's motivation to learn a second language. And here with me, I have my guest, Sam. Why don't you introduce yourself, Sam?
Hello, my name's Sam Berryessa. I'm also a student here at Georgetown University, studying Chinese and Comp Sci.
All right, well, let's just jump straight into it. Why don't you tell me a little bit about your language learning background?
So, the main language I've spoken in my house was English, but my grandma spoke Spanish, and my mom put us in Spanish classes when we were little. So and we would also listen to a lot of like Mexican music. So I had a pretty good like exposure to Spanish growing up, and then I also took it in school. Like from kindergarten through 8th grade, but that Spanish was not that great. So it was really during high school that I got a lot better at Spanish. And then now in college, I am studying Chinese, so I'm learning that one now.
All right, very cool. A lot of language in this guy's life. So first, we're going to evaluate your attitudes towards language in general. You know, there's some people who just absolutely hate language. They just think they should only speak one. They only want to use English or something to get through life. So, firstly, how do you view language in the world? You know, how does it affect your day-to-day? Do you think it affects people's lives in a meaningful way? And is learning a second language important to you?
I mean, definitely. I think learning a second language is very important. I can understand why people don't want to put in that effort, because it is a lot of work, and part of it is, you know, allowing yourself to be self-conscious and learn in front of other people. But I do think it's necessary because different languages, like just structurally, like if you look at the syntax or like grammatically or the idioms, it's like especially the idioms, you'll see that they have such like a source of different perspectives on life. like depending on what's emphasized in a sentence, what's not, and you can sort of see how these things make sort of biases in how things are talked about. And especially today, language is so important because, right, it's how we describe the world around us. It's how governments tell us. Like the words they use are very specific, and and they use them for a reason, and allowing us to like learn different languages allows us to sort of see what those uses of the languages are, how they might be used to get someone's goal across. Yeah.
All right. So you said you're learning Chinese. Chinese is obviously a very important language. It's one of the most spoken languages in the world. Very important in the United States for international security and the such. Do you think Chinese, do you have any specific thoughts on Chinese, and is it important in your day-to-day life?
Like day-to-day life importance, I don't know if I would like say it's vital. I'm communicating with a bunch of people and they only speak Chinese, but I mean, if I want to like pursue something involving language, I do think that learning Chinese is really like you said, it's good for security. There's so many other people speak it. It's such like, I mean, the language itself, it's so like rich in terms of idioms and cultural like significance, and it's very interesting to learn about. So
All right. Well, that's great. Got some opinions on how language should be viewed in the world. Now we're going to go on to the kind of self-evaluation section of the podcast. We're going to examine Sam's main motivations for learning his second language and how he would evaluate himself as a language learner.
Okay.
So let's just start with the self-evaluation. Do you think you have, an average language learning aptitude, above average, below average?
I would say that I have an above average language learning aptitude, mainly just from like I did a language study and we did the aptitude test and I did score fairly high. And I think part of it is also definitely motivation. I think I'm able to, find motivation or seek out different forms of motivation to like keep me going. So I would definitely say that, like comparatively, I do have a decently high language aptitude.
All right, perfect. And then you spoke a little about motivation. That was going to be my next question.
Oh, okay.
What are your main motivations for learning Chinese? Are they more extrinsic? You feel job opportunities, intrinsic? You want to fit into the Chinese culture. What really motivates you to push? I mean, you are majoring in it, so you have quite a strong commitment to the language.
Yeah, it's a bit of a funny story. I was applying to colleges, and I knew I needed to do something STEM, where I was like, you got to do something that makes money. But then I was like, most of the STEM things, I'm decent enough to do them, but I didn't know which one I wanted, but I knew I liked learning languages, so I was like, well, I've already learned Spanish, and I want to learn another language. Chinese has so many people that speak it. There's so many opportunities, like job opportunities, internships, government-related stuff, if I ever want to do that. And I was like, oh, well, I might as well apply there and, pick something in STEM, go along with it, and try and combine them. So I don't know how much, intrinsic, motivation I have towards learning Chinese because, I mean, I'm not Chinese at all. I don't really, have a familial connection, so I don't have, a really good inside look at the culture. I mean, I have friends that, show me or tell me different things, but I guess a lot of the motivation was, sort of not even random, but extrinsic, I guess.
All right, next question. You can answer this as briefly or dive into it as much as you want. Do you enjoy learning Chinese? That can either be in general in your life or specifically here at Georgetown.
I think specifically here at Georgetown, it's intensive, right? That the course is called intensive, and it is intensive. It's a lot of work, and I think for me, I like learning languages. I know that about myself. I like learning new ways to like in Chinese, the way that you can call someone ugly is nankan, which is hard to look at, which makes me it's so literal and it makes me laugh when I think about it. So it's things like that keep me motivated. But I mean, I don't know. what was the question again?
Do you enjoy learning Chinese?
I think I enjoy it enough to keep going. I think there's definitely parts, but I think like learning a language will always come with like struggles and frustrations. Like, I mean, we have to write characters like 10 times like every every week we have 3 tests, and it's a lot of work. And I think it's good that I'm here at Georgetown where I can complain about it like just a little bit, but also I know that I love it and that my teachers are so good and so willing to help me get better, and I think that I've gotten better because of that.
All right, great. So you're clearly a very motivated language learner. You believe that you have a bit higher than average language learning aptitude, and probably most importantly, you enjoy learning the language, right?
Yeah.
So now we're going to get into a couple of things that you think might have influenced your attitude towards language learning. So start from the ground up, your childhood and environment. Do you think the environment you grew up in has influenced your attitude towards language learning at all?
I mean, absolutely, right? Like I said, in my house, like my parents didn't really speak English, but my mom did try to, because my grandma can speak Spanish and English, but my mom, she can only understand. And it's like due to like my grandma when she went to school, the schools were segregated. All right, so at school they spoke Spanish. When my mom went to school, schools were integrated, and so they didn't really speak Spanish; they spoke English. And like as a kid, and especially like in elementary school, I didn't really understand that. Plus, the Spanish that was offered at my kindergarten through 8th grade school was very, very bad. In terms of they would cover like the same thing over and over again. I never really felt like I was learning much, and but like I guess 9th grade I got to high school and I was like, you know, I want to like be able to talk to my grandma in Spanish. Like I want to have a conversation with her and like, you know, talk about things about the language. I want to read these books, like these great literature works that are in Spanish. And so I was like, well, I guess I'll do it in high school. So that definitely like got me to like appreciate the value of it.
All right, so books provide a perfect segue to the final section of the interview, which is how media has influenced your attitude towards language learning. And here I'm going to ask that you focus specifically on Chinese. So when I say media, it can really be anything: film, music, art, poetry, whatever you desire. Has any of it influenced the way that you view your language? Have you used it as a means to advance your language learning? Is this something that's important to you?
I mean, yeah, I think like just like scrolling through stuff on just internet, YouTube or whatever, and then I'll find something and maybe I'll remember that my friend had mentioned something about it, like it's particularly to Chinese. I'm like, oh my god, so I'll look at it, or they'll like mention some historical figure and then I'll look them up, but then that sort of gets you like down, like because the algorithm will like feed you what it thinks you want, and so I get like more and more and I find it interesting, so of course I'm like gonna keep going, and especially now, like now that I can actually understand Chinese like a lot more than I can, it's like funny going back over like, you know, different memes that I see where I can read the Chinese and or listen to the audio, because there's some where it's like where the audio and like the words don't match up, or like the subtitles don't match up because they'll try and translate them and it'll be wrong, and like I don't know, it like shows me how far I've come, and it's like, you know, you can keep going. So there's like motivation in that, but then there's also like you get kind of get exposed to different sides of like social media, because obviously there's different spheres of influence, especially you know, different language learner communities, or like there's like English communities, Spanish communities online, and you kind of get pulled into them and you can see like a lot of the cool stuff they have to offer.
So you would say that social media has definitely had the biggest influence in terms of media on your motivation to learn Chinese?
When you say media, like yeah, I out of media, like, yeah, because I mean it's so accessible. I think literature, right, and stuff, and getting into that, you really only get into that when you're at a like a higher language level, whereas with this short form content that is so much of social media, it allows, it's far more accessible, right? It's free, and like you can sort of like get the gist of things, and you can like read the comments and, you know, see how people are reacting to stuff. Whereas with literature, it's like, it's, you know, it's great, right? That's why it's good literature, but it takes a lot of time, and especially when you're a beginning like language learner, it's far easier to do social media. So, yeah.
All right. One last question. Social media is pretty infamous for kind of cultivating these online circles of people, groups that associate around one thing. They develop their own terms and inner language. Do you find that with Chinese social media specifically, there's any group that you have a desire to attach to or join? I know you said earlier that your main motivations for learning Chinese were more extrinsic than intrinsic, but have you felt any, I guess, pull from social media to, understand a specific account or community of people?
I would definitely say understand. I think that's part of what like learning a language is understanding a group of people and how they, choose to value the world around them. And I think, when you're pulled into a different language community, which maybe does things far differently from yours, not everyone wants to understand, and I understand that. Right now, I know that I like some of the things I'm like, oh wow, why do you have this custom? What does it represent? And so maybe I'll want to know more about that. I don't know if I really want to join it per se. But there's also stuff where it's like, oh wow, you guys also do that, and it's like finding like a shared sense of similarity, and you're like, oh, right, I also do that thing, like different cultural traditions where it's like for example, you kind of fight over the bill or something like that. It's like seeing other people have that like similar experience. You're like, you share these things. It shows you how much you have in common, but then it also lets you like understand why people do things differently. And I don't think that that makes me necessarily want to join them in that, but it gives me like a better view on the world. I don't know. Yeah.
So to you, social media is more or less a tool that you're using to kind of guide your language journey. It's not really a thing you want to, it's not the goal that you're trying to get, but it's helping you along the way. It's giving you additional resources that you can't find in the classroom.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like for colloquial speech, especially, all right, that'll be very helpful. I also think what would be what's definitely more helpful is actually going to a community and learning with them, which I mean I have to do as a Chinese major, so that's gonna happen. But I mean, if it gives you a little preparation, gives you stuff to talk about that's shared in common with other people, it's just a nice way to oh, you saw that, oh, haha, yeah.
All right, perfect. Well, we learned a lot about Sam today, about motivation to learn second languages in general. Thank you for being on here, Sam.
Oh, thanks for having me, Mr. Malone.
That was Atone with Malone.
Yeah.
And I'll conclude with some final thoughts and get on with our days. Another great big thank you to Sam for coming on today. I think he exposed a lot of important information about social media and motivation. First, I would like to emphasize some of the immediate benefits of social media as a language learning tool. It exposes learners to a lot of short-form content, often packaged in simpler mediums than, say, literature or film. There are comments that can provide personal interaction. You can often translate directly within the app. This is a very prominent feature on Instagram and YouTube. And you can save videos that you come across to view later. It's a fun, casual escape, and when combined with classroom education, it can create a very engaging experience. However, the classroom education is kind of an important factor here. Without classroom education, or a similar substitute, social media cannot single-handedly facilitate learning a second language. It is not built for it. It is not structured enough, and it doesn't have the educational resources to be an educational asset, at least right now. But when paired with educational experience or any other substitute, such as self-study, it can add an extra layer of cultural engagement, and this is very important. It is in this cultural engagement that social media has the largest impact on the motivation to learn. Social media fosters unique communities and encourages a learner to join them, and through the algorithm, it can then expose them to other communities in their target language. The accessibility of social media is its greatest strength, and one that makes it a valuable resource in any language learner's handbook, and crucial for strengthening motivation.